Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I'm going to be doing another American Horror Story Season 8 Apocalypse episode recap and review. This week's episode is number 7 in the season, and it is called Traitor. I feel like it was a great episode and I can't wait to start chatting about it with you. But first, there are a few points that I want to mention quickly. I do want to point out, in case you haven't seen any of my videos like this before, that I've done videos like this for every episode in the season so far. So I'll make sure I link that playlist up and also down below. Also, in case you haven't seen my videos like this, you might not know the format that I go through. I guess I will explain. I do begin with a recap at the start and then get into the review and theories at the end. So I will make sure I put a timestamp up above if you want to skip ahead past the recap. Although I feel like it's pretty useful just to go through and sort of think about what happened in the episode again if you need a refresher. But of course the choice is up to you. And then lastly, I do want to point out something that might be kind of obvious. I've been very sick throughout this past week and also am still pretty sick today. I've had labyrinthitis, which pretty much just means that I'm very dizzy and kind of spacey, so I hope I'm not too off with the fairies today. And then of course, the obvious, I have laryngitis, so that explains the croaky voice. I feel like every time I speak I sound like Myrtle. I really hope I don't, but that's what I hear in my head. I hope it's not too noticeable, and I wasn't really sure if I should say anything, but just in case it's obvious, I do apologise. It will only be for this video and I hope it's not too grating. Despite how I'm feeling, I loved the episode and still want to discuss it with you, so that's why I'm here. I hope you enjoy it. And now I'm just going to do the recap. Alright, so this episode began with Dinah using a voodoo doll on a woman that we haven't seen before, and it's safe to say that we won't see her again, considering after using the voodoo doll for a bit, Dinah did remove her heart. And we soon see why. Dinah was paid by another woman to do this, as the woman who had her heart removed had tried to steal the other woman's husband. Then Dinah and the woman who paid her put together a little bit of a potion using that heart. They blended up with a few other ingredients, including that woman's toenails. They're putting together a potion for her husband. Once they feed it to him, or force feed it to him, I guess you could say, Dinah says that he will forget everything and remain faithful to his wife. Dinah also refers to herself as the Voodoo Queen, which I thought was interesting that she is the new Voodoo Queen now that Marie is gone. As Dinah is leaving that house, Cordelia does catch up with her, and they do both know who each other are. After talking for a little bit, Cordelia asks Dinah to help her set up a meeting with Papa Legba. Then there were the credits, and after that there was quite a long scene showing Joan Collins again playing a different character. Her name was Bubbles McGee, and it was a Christmas horror movie. So a whole bunch of random things happened. She basically disemboweled her husband, and then a serial killer was at her door trying to get in a Santa costume. It was a little bit interesting to see. She was very flamboyant and everything. That was great, but I feel like that scene dragged on a little bit in my opinion. I feel like they could have cut it a bit, but it was just setting up the fact that she is an actress. And also a witch as well, because once they've finished wrapping the scene or just called cut, Madison goes to meet her, and it is quite funny. They sling a few barbs at each other. They've obviously also met before at the coven, and it is revealed that Bubbles had left because she didn't like being there with Madison, or at least that's what she says. For a little while, both witches do bicker about who is a better actress and who is a better witch. Of course, Madison is saying a lot of nasty things about Bubbles and how old she is. Typical bitchy Madison, but I thought it was great. They're both kind of keeping up with each other for a bit there. But then after all of that, Madison does mention that Bubbles has been summoned. Where Bubbles has been summoned to is a lunch meeting with Madison and also Myrtle, where the three witches sit down. They do discuss Bubbles' power of reading minds and the fact that they want her to use it on one of the warlocks, Ariel. Back at Miss Robichaud's academy, Dinah helps Cordelia summon Papa Legba. Once he arrives, he does say he knows that Michael is the Antichrist. Cordelia asks him to open the gates of hell in order to trap Michael there. At this point, Legba mentions that the last time he was summoned by a Supreme and the Voodoo Queen, that he was given a great gift, and that was Nan. So Nan pops out from behind him, which was great to see her back again. Obviously, she was one of the only witches that they haven't touched on, since all of the other witches, apart from her, were brought back. Nan says that she enjoys hell and she's helping Papa Legba. He says that he wants another witch's soul as payment, and Cordelia refuses. Nan asks for this as well, saying that she's lonely and she misses her other witches, but since Cordelia won't change her mind, Legba won't help her and he disappears. Shortly after this, still at the academy, The girls discuss Michael, and they also discuss how a new Supreme comes about. Up until this point, it didn't seem that Mallory knew about a Supreme rising, as the other one fades and then eventually dies off. Also, Coco realizes that she has another power that she didn't know about, and that is counting the calories in food. And the other girls help her test this on a whole bunch of food items, and she's right about all of them. She also takes a bite of cake and eventually chokes and seems to die. However, Mallory quickly reverses this in front of Zoe and also Queenie, who are both quite shocked to see this. After this, Cordelia and Zoe speak. Cordelia says that she's very weak and doesn't want to fight Michael, and Zoe tells her that she thinks that Mallory is the next Supreme. Over at the boys' school, Myrtle and Bubbles go to meet with the Warlocks, and they say they pretty much want to resolve bad blood and celebrate the fact that Michael is the next Supreme. And over the course of this dinner, Bubbles listens to their thoughts, and she hears Ariel thinking about the fact that John Henry was killed and burnt, so she knows this and knows he had a part to play, and he also thinks about the fact that he wants all of the witches to die. And then back at the academy, all of the witches, except for Misty, sit down to dinner. They are all talking and celebrating the fact that Mallory could be the next Supreme, or the fact that they think she is, even though Cordelia says she has to do the 7 wonders or do some more tests. And the group that is there, with all of them sitting down together, is what we've seen in that picture a couple weeks back of everyone sitting down to dinner. So it wasn't the Coven House as many people suspected. Although maybe that should have been obvious from the beginning, considering it was pretty much the whole Coven there. Behold also brings up at this dinner, he asks why they're celebrating when they know that Michael is the Antichrist, and they know how evil he is. He doesn't know why they're all sitting around drinking wine. Cordelia says that she has known that there was a evil rising for a long time, and she's taken steps to prepare, and that she's done something she never really wanted to do. And it shows 2 years prior when she brought Myrtle back, or maybe it was 2 years before the apocalypse. She brought Myrtle back by herself with very powerful magic, as she needed Myrtle's help to provide some guidance in the coming times. A group of the witches also make their way to the gas station where John Henry was killed. Zoe manages to collect all of the ashes that were left of him, and then Mallory performs powerful magic in order to resurrect him. As Mallory is bringing John Henry back using just the ashes, it switches over into that 1920s style 7 wonders, old-fashioned pictures that they've done with Coven and also Apocalypse when Michael did the 7 wonders. It was just a short scene this time in that style, but still very cool to see again. Once he's revived, John Henry speaks with the witches about his murder, and of course they are thinking that it was one of the Warlocks, but he tells them that he was in fact murdered by a woman, of course Ms. Mead. After this, Cordelia sits down with Coco, saying that she wants Coco's help in eliminating the traitor. Of course, Coco doesn't believe in herself that she can do this, but Cordelia says that she does need her help and that Mallory will have a different part to play. Now, it shows Ms. Mead doing her regular meet and hoof shop for the week, I guess. And as she's taking all of her stuff out to the car, Coco approaches her, speaks to her very briefly before she's shot with a tranquilizer dart. Or something like that. We can assume it wasn't something like a bullet, it didn't kill her. I guess it looked like what I would imagine a tranquilizer dart would look like. And as Coco was sort of lying down, starting to fall asleep or pass out, I think Mead said something to Coco about wanting to put her in a stew, and she does approach Coco to grab her, I guess, but before she can, the men that help out the witches, they're always there during the burnings, do grab Mead and take her away. They also pick up Coco to kind of take care of her too, so obviously she was just used as bait in this instance, but it worked very well. Over at the boys' school, the Warlocks, Ariel and also Baldwin discuss how they're going to take out the witches. Baldwin said that he's created a poison that is a powder and when breathed in would kill you, only if you're a woman. Of course he did freak out Ariel a little bit by blowing some in his face first, and it had no effect on him. But they are very quickly interrupted by the witches. Cordelia mentioned as well that it was an idea, or the poison was originally created by a female witch, and he just stole that idea and kind of swapped the genders. But Cordelia easily manages to take control over the Warlocks and take them into their custody, and eventually they do take both of the men along with Mead to burn them at the stake. So I believe she said something along the lines of witches couldn't normally execute Warlocks, but she let John Henry take part. He threw some gasoline on Ms. Mead and eventually they were all set alight. Obviously both of the Warlocks were quite frightened, but Ms. Mead seemed to relish this idea. She wasn't frightened. She was kind of praying to Satan before she got burnt up, and I think she was laughing too when she was burning. As the traitors burn, the Coven all walks away along with the 2 Warlocks who have kind of joined them as this new group who all want to defeat Michael. But now that was the end of the episode. I feel like this one was a really good episode. There was definitely a lot going on, but I feel like it wasn't too spread thin, if that makes sense. It was just a good fast pace, and I feel like it really should be going that way at the end of the season. There's still a lot that they need to wrap up. I have noted down a few highlights of the episode. First one, I guess a lot of people will be happy to see Nan again, even though she was only in it briefly. It was a big surprise. I think she had said she wouldn't be in the episode, and she was only around for a bit, but it was still great to see, considering they had touched on all of the witches coming back. Cordelia always said, "My girl's back, we're back together," but Nan was never there, although we do see Cordelia when she sees Nan. She had no idea what happened to Nan. I guess they thought maybe she just ran off. But now Cordelia knows that her mother had a part to play in getting rid of Nan. So I feel like that was great closure in terms of seeing Nan again. Another great point of the episode is of course the fact that they killed the traitors. I feel like that was very satisfying, and I'm glad that it was the warlocks. I had hoped it would be them. I feel like I saw a lot of speculation online, many people saying they thought that Zoe or maybe Madison would be the traitor, that it might be a witch, but of course it was the warlocks, and of course it was kind of leading up to that for quite some time. We knew they were doing very shady things, and even though they weren't necessarily aware that Michael was the Antichrist, they didn't know that. They were still doing things like taking out other warlocks and just trying to kill out all of the witches because they were jealous. Of course, Myrtle said it was kind of a kill or be killed situation, and the witches were more powerful and they took out the warlocks. The evil warlocks anyway. They still have some warlocks on their side who know what's going on with Michael, and they're all coming together for a common good, which I think is great. Also another upside, and I briefly mentioned this before, but I am very glad that with this episode the pacing was working a lot better, and they are coming to the end of the season. It's wrapping things up and kind of moving towards a bit of a resolution. I feel like this episode definitely got a lot done without being rushed or dragging things out. I feel like it was a perfect medium. One brief little downside, the absence of certain characters. I guess there was a lot crammed into the episode, so it might have been a bit hard to do, but there was obviously no Misty in the episode, no mention of her even, so not really sure where she is. I hope she's back next episode. And obviously they didn't show Michael either, although there was a mention of him. I think somebody said that he was out in the wilderness preparing himself, so maybe we will see next episode what he was getting up to and what he's been plotting. There are a few quick theories I want to touch on as well. I saw a very interesting one on Reddit, which I'm about to share. I saw someone had suggested, and a few people seem to be coming up with similar ideas, that Venable was planted in the outpost by the witches, and whether she had some sort of mind control or something along those lines. People seem to think she was put in the outpost in order to do things a certain way to bring out Michael, because her strict rules and weird control of the outpost against his instructions is what brought him there in the first place. So I guess that could make a fair bit of sense. Obviously Cordelia is playing the long game. I feel like that's not too much of a crazy idea. It does make a fair bit of sense, especially considering the fact that 3 of the witches ended up in the outpost and all of their minds were wiped by Cordelia, so it definitely seems like part of a bigger plan, and she really does seem way ahead of things. So I feel like that idea about Venable makes a lot of sense. Also, after last week's episode especially, I've seen heaps of people theorizing online that there will be a time travel element, or the witches will do something in order to stop Michael from being born or kill him when he was younger, and that they'll be going back to the murder house. So that will be very interesting to see. I feel like that's something that I've kind of been thinking about since very early on in the season, knowing that murder house would come into play. So who knows how it will wrap up. Kind of a similar idea but a little bit different is many people are thinking that Mallory will literally undo all of the damage from the bombs but not necessarily turn back time, kind of how she's healed the deer and also Coco, but I feel like something about that seems a little bit less likely than time travel to me in the traditional sense. Also another very popular theory, and again this is something I'm thinking a lot about too, that's the fact that Cordelia is just pretending to be fading. I mean, she's definitely having moments where she seems super weak to even walk around her house, and then she's still doing spells. So she was able to take over the warlocks pretty easily from what we could see in this episode anyway, and obviously we know that by the time she gets to the outpost she's super strong. She's just brought 3 witches back from the dead, and she didn't seem to be struggling then. I guess it's really hard to know for sure, but it seems more like maybe she's pretending to fade just to draw Michael into a false sense of security with being known as the Supreme, or thinking that he's winning or something like that. But she's very smart. I think she's got a big plan ahead, and this is just part of it. Plus she seems to be telling anyone who will listen how weak she's getting. She's telling all of her other witches and everything, I'm so weak, I'm fading, this and that. I feel like really if that was happening she'd probably keep it a little bit more under wraps. And that theory leads on to another theory. I've seen so many people question this pretty much since Mallory revived that deer, or actually since in the outpost she had that little showdown with Michael. She's been shown to be very powerful from pretty early on, and it seems like a little bit more or a little bit different to the other witches' powers. So if she's not the next Supreme, what could she be? Some people are saying they think she could be an angel or the second coming of Christ. She seems to have pretty opposite powers to Michael. Of course, we've seen her not only heal that deer's wounds but reverse them, and then in a contrast, in the previous episode we saw Michael not just destroy the ghosts or people he killed, but he made them cease to exist. So kind of opposite powers there, and opposite intention as well. I've also seen a lot of people say that she must be a direct descendant of the first witch that was shown a little bit in Roanoke, so Lady Gaga's character. But I don't know, I guess it's a bit hard to tell. I feel like those theories aren't just due to the powers that she's displaying, but certain styling choices that they've made on the show that make people question, what is she really? She's always got headbands that look like crowns, or in this episode it looked like she was wearing an actual crown. So it seems like there is definitely something different about her, but hopefully they reveal that soon. Lastly, this is a quick point I want to mention. I don't think I mentioned it when I first saw it at the time, but there's a lot of photos going around online that kind of link up with episodes down the track. So of course we saw Madison at Murder House way back at the start of the season. There was a photo of her there and we were able to speculate from that. Plus the dinner party, the photo of all of them together that we saw this episode. Now there was something that I saw a couple weeks back, maybe a month ago. It was pretty early on, of Madison dressed up in full pink with her hair curled. It definitely looked a lot like Chanel, so I have no idea what that could even be about. I guess, of course, maybe there's the idea that it's just Madison and she styled herself differently, whether that's through a flashback or just a different look that she wants to go for, or maybe it is somehow Chanel Oberlin. I've also seen people suggest that maybe Madison did play Chanel Oberlin when she was an actress, which I feel like that would be kind of interesting to see, but who knows, maybe she also just walked around the set like that to throw people off. At this point, of course, none of us can know for certain, but I'm very keen to find out. I can't wait to see what happens in the next few episodes, and of course there's only 3 of them left, so I feel like that time will pass by super quickly, and then the season will be over before we know it. So I'm super keen to see how it pans out. I wanted to say as well, I feel like this season is definitely one of the strongest seasons in such a long time. I'm glad that they did the crossover, and this unique world that they've created of Apocalypse just works so well for the show. I feel like even though the past 2 seasons before this one were good, they were just very different. This one definitely has more of a tone of older seasons, and I love that. Alright, now that's all of the thoughts that I have to share in this episode. Thank you for watching the video today. I do hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up if you did, and let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the episode and what you think will happen in the next few episodes, because I guess there's a lot of different ways it could go, and maybe you've heard of some really interesting theories that I haven't heard of or mentioned yet, so please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Also, I wanted to say a big thank you for being so patient listening to me this time around. I hope my voice wasn't too difficult to understand or hear, and I'm sure I'll be back to my normal sounding self next week, and hopefully a lot more energetic as well. I need to go now and drink a giant glass of water and have a big coughing fit, but thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye!